The Doubledown Casino Basic Strategy and How to Win More. I recently have stumbled upon the Doubledown Casino. I had heard of it on a radio report. It is a virtual casino that does not pay out anything. If your ego needs to play with big numbers, they will sell you virtual chips that have no value other than to impress people you do not know on the internet. Also, once per day they spin a wheel for free and you will get a minimum of $5,000 worth of chips. One of the parts of the website has Blackjack available. I did play enough Blackjack there to get myself to the 14th level, which is the whale level. As you play, you get what are called experience points. The more experience points you get, the higher of a level you go to. To get to the highest level, I estimated it would take the equivalent of a full-time job for 50 years. They do have 4 levels for you to play at. All 4 levels seem to give you experience points at the same rate. While playing, I noticed how much the players deviated from basic strategy. In a couple-hour period, I observed 55 people playing. One appeared to be playing basic strategy correctly. 9 left the playing area too soon for me to form an opinion on how closely they follow basic strategy, and 45 played as if they were totally unfamiliar with basic strategy. Basic strategy is the optimum way to play your cards in blackjack if the only knowledge you have is what the dealer's up card is and what cards you have. There are variations in basic strategy, but those variations have to do with the rules of the particular blackjack game you are playing. For example, splitting 2s, 3s, 4s, and 7s is different if you can double down on splits or not. In the Doubledown Casino, you do not know when they reshuffle the deck, so you cannot effectively card count. I will now set out to explain how basic strategy works. There is no particular reason as to why it works. It is like 3 times 8 equals 24. It is what it is. When you use it, you will find that your intuition will tell you to do something other than follow basic strategy. Sometimes your intuition will be right, sometimes your intuition will be wrong. Overall, your intuition will be wrong more often than it is right. Therefore, you must follow basic strategy exactly. To make basic strategy make more sense, you have to look at the rules of blackjack. First, you must look at the deck. Each card except the ace is assigned a value. 2s are 2, 3s are 3, 4s are 4, 5s are 5, 6 are 6, 7 are 7, 8s are 8, 9s are 9, 10s are 10s. Jack or face cards are also 10. So hereafter in this video, when I refer to 10s, I'm also referring to the face cards. The ace can be either 1 or 11. A hand in which the total, when counting the ace as 11, is 21 or less is a soft hand. A hand in which the total would exceed 21 if the ace is counted as 11 would be a hard hand. Looking at the deck of the 13 cards of each suit. 4 are 10s and 9 are not 10s. For purposes of making sense of basic strategy only, it makes sense to assume that every unseen card is a 10. Using this assumption, you would actually be wrong 69% of the time. The dealer distributes cards in a clockwise manner, starting with the dealer's left. After each player has received a card, the dealer gives himself a card. Then the dealer gives one more card to each player. The dealer then flips over the next card, and that is called their up card. The card you cannot see is called the hole card. Occasionally, the dealer will have an ace up as their up card, as here. You will be then asked if you want insurance. The answer to the question should always be no. For this game, insurance is always a bad bet. If you are card counting, then there are times when you should take insurance. What insurance is a side bet that the dealer does not have a 10 as their hole card. The amount you have to wager for insurance is half of your bet. If you take insurance and the hole card is a 10, you get to keep your bet and the amount of the insurance. If the hole card is not a 10, you will lose your insurance bet, which is half of your wager. Looking at the deck, there are 4 cards that can be 10, and there are 9 cards that can be not 10s. So that means that since the insurance bet is half of your wager, the insurance bet will save you 4 out of 13 times. The savings will be 4 wagers. However, 9 times out of 13, at the cost of 1/2 bet of your bet, you will lose the insurance bet. If you multiply 9, which is the number of cards that are not 10s, times 1/2, you get 4.5 times your wager. So by taking insurance, on average, you will lose 4.5 times the amount of your wager to save 4 times your wager. Insurance is not a good bet for the player. The rules of the game are that the player can make a number of choices, and the object of the game is to get a total of your cards closer to 21 than the dealer does. If the dealer gets closer to 21 than the player does, the player loses their wager. If the player has the same number of points as the dealer, neither side gets any chips, and it is called a push. And if the player has more points than the dealer, then the dealer will pay the player the amount that the player wagered. An exception to this is if the player gets a 10 and an ace, on their first two cards, it is called a blackjack. If that happens, the dealer will pay 3 for every 2 that the player wagered. If you split tens or aces and get a 10 and an ace for a total of 21, that is not a blackjack. A blackjack also beats a total of 21, which is not a blackjack. Depending on what cards the player is dealt, they can do 3 or 4 things. With the first cards they are dealt, they can stand. That means they elect to take no more cards. Once they stand, the dealer will move to the next player, and the next player will decide what they want to do. Another option that the player has is to take another card. This is called hitting. A player can continue to take cards until they have reached 21, they choose to stand, or they have gone over 21. If the player goes over 21, it is called a bust, and the dealer collects your chips. Even if the dealer eventually busts, you still lose your wager if you busted. This rule gives the casino about an 8% advantage. Most of the other rules of blackjack are to bring the player back from this 8% deficit. Another choice that a player has is to double down. Doubling down means that the player gets exactly one more card and they double their wager. If the player has 2 cards of the same value, they may split the cards once. If you have, for example, a 10 and a face card, you can split them. If you are in a real casino and you split tens, for some reason that escapes me, you will oftentimes experience a lot of hostility from the other players. Other than for purposes of amusement, scorn, or pity, you should be indifferent to how other people play their cards at the Doubledown Casino. Over the long haul, for every stupid play they make that hurts you, they will make another stupid play that will help you. After a hand is split, it becomes 2 separate hands. You can hit, stand, or double down on it as you see fit. One thing that people often neglect after they split is to double down if they can. Anecdotally, it seems when you win your double downs, your chip total goes up, and when you lose your double downs, your chip total goes down. I will now go to the deck that I had previously, or the hand. I will now go to the hand that I had previously dealt out. The first thing under this condition that the dealer would ask is, does anyone want insurance? At the Doubledown Casino, the answer to that question should always be no. Looking at the first hand, the player has an ace and a 10, so they have a blackjack, and the dealer will pay them 3 chips for every 2 chips they wagered. Now the second player will elect to take a card. That's a 10. That makes their total 25, so the dealer will take their chip. The next player has 2 8s. Basic strategy will tell you to always split 8s. You'll get another card. That brings the total to 15. Then they'll take another card. Basic strategy will tell them, and their total is 20. Then they'll say they should stand. Then they'll receive another card on the other hand for a total of 11, and a king, which brings their total to 21. So they'll stand. The next player has 2 sevens, but against an ace, you do not split them. You take another card, which is a 9, so a total of 23. The player busts, and the dealer takes their chip. The next hand is 2 tens. This hand is just to show you how goofy things can happen. The player has 2 chips. For reasons unknown to anyone, they decide to double down. They get another card. It's an ace. So they have a total of 21. Anything can happen. The next player has 17, and they'll elect to stand. The dealer then shows their whole card, which is 17. In the Doubledown Casino, they hit on soft 17, they get a 9, which brings their total to 16, and a 2 that brings their total to 18. So this card player has a total of 20. They would get paid 2 chips. This one has 21, so they get paid 2 chips. And this one has only 17, so they'd lose their chips. The double down person has a 21, so they get 4 chips. Dealing out the next hand. Okay, the dealer has a 10 up. The first player gets a 3. Basic strategy would tell you if you got 16 against the dealer's 10 and you have more than 2 cards, then you stand. Going to the next player, they have 8s again. First card's a 3. Well, they had to put it on a second wager. Since it's an 11 against a 10, they double down. They get a 5 for 16. And next one's an 18 and they choose to stand. Next player has an 11 up against the dealer's 10. They choose to double down and get a 6. The next player has a 17, which is a soft hand. They get a queen, which is a 7, which is 17, and that's a hard 17, so they stand. The next hand gets an 8, which is a bust, so the dealer takes their chips. Next one gets a 21. Dealer's whole card is at, and 20. So then this is a 16. They lose. This is 16 on this, so they lose their double down. The 18 loses. 17 loses. The other 17 loses. The 21 wins and gets paid double. And that's how hands work. This is the basic strategy table. Okay, the way you read it is, you look at what the dealer up card is. then it tells you what to hit to. So if the dealer has a 2 or 3 as their up card, then you hit to 13. That means if your total is 13 or more, you stop taking cards. If the dealer's up card is 4 to 6, then you hit to 12. Using this, if the dealer's up cards are 4 to 6, you will never bust. Then, if the dealer's up card is 7 to ace, you hit to 17. However, there's an asterisk here, and it says if you have more than 2 cards up, then you hit, and the dealer has a 10 up, then you hit to 16. Then it turns out that these 3 rules tell you 88% of the hands you will see. Then when you get into splitting cards, if you have 2 aces, you always split them. If you have 9s, then you split them 2 to 9 except 7. There is no rational reason for accepting 7, but if you think about it in terms of your unseen card being a 10, then the dealer is likely going to have a 17 and 18 beats 17. With regards to 8s, you always split them. With regards to 7s, you split them 2 to 7. Now there's 2 more asterisks there. For reasons that are just the way they are, you stand on a dealer 10 if you have 2 7s. Then 6s, you split on 5 and 6, or 3 to 6. You split 6s 3 to 6, and 4s you split if the dealer has a 5 or 6 up. 3s you split 2 to 7 as you do with 2s, 2 to 7, dealer up card. Soft hand again is a hand where the ace can still count as 1 or 11. If the dealer has a 9 or 10 up, then you hit to soft 19. All other up cards of the dealer you hit to soft 18. Here are the double down rules. If your total is 11, then you double down if the dealer has a 2 to 10 up. If your total is 10, you double down 2 to 9. If your total is 9, you double down 3 to 6. If you have an ace 7 or an ace 6, then you double down if the dealer has a 3 to 6 up. However, there's 3 more asterisks there, and the double down if you can means that if you go up to the soft hand rule, it says all else stand on 18. Well, if you have a 7 and an ace, that's 18. So this rule would tell you to stand, but the double down rule takes precedence. So if the dealer's got a 3 to 6, you double down. If the dealer has an ace 5 or an ace 4, you double down. Or if you have an ace 5 and an ace 4, and the dealer has a 4 to 6 up, you double down. If you have an ace 3 and an ace 2, and the dealer has a 5 or 6 up, you double down. And then again, do not take insurance. And that is basic strategy. You have to memorize all the rules and follow them. This is the formula for determining what your maximum bet should be at the Doubledown Casino. You look at the amount of money you have to wager, and you divide that by 20 times the hours you want to play, and you will never run out of chips. Thank you.